I sold everything. My home in Aberdeen, my car, my tools, all of it. I gave up 40 years of work for a woman who promised forever. She said, "We'll build our life together here." I believed her. But the day my money cleared, she vanished. No note, no call, no goodbye. That memory was already heavy in my chest when, a few nights ago, I opened an email from one of you. Not from her, not from anyone who knew her. From a long-time viewer of this channel, a man who said he'd been watching quietly for months. He told me he rarely comments, never shares much, but he wanted me to know that these stories made him feel less alone, and this time, he finally felt ready to write about what happened to him. When I first read his message, I felt a sting of shame, like hearing my own reflection spoken back at me. Then came anger, the old kind that rises when you realize how many of us get trapped in the same web. But as I read on, something softened. I felt connection. Relief, even. His story wasn't just his. It was mine, too. By the time I reached his last words, I was blinking hard, fighting back tears I thought I'd buried years ago. So before I take you deeper into this story, let me pause. If these confessions touch something in you, please like this video, subscribe, and leave a comment. And tell me, where are you watching from tonight? Whether it's Scotland, Singapore, or San Diego, I read every single one. To those of you who keep coming back week after week, who sit with me through these late-night confessions, I owe you a super thank you. You've turned my loneliness into something I can share, and that means more than I can ever explain. Let me take you back to where it all started. The key was warm in my palm when she placed it there. Mayuri's fingers curled around mine, and I felt something I hadn't felt in 3 years chosen. "This is our beginning, Colin," she whispered, her dark eyes reflecting the afternoon Sunday. We stood in front of the house, modest but new, with white walls and a red tile roof. My heart hammered against my ribs like it hadn't since I was 20. At 63, I thought those feelings were gone forever. "Do you like it?" she asked, stepping closer. I could smell her shampoo, something floral and sweet. "I love it," I said, and meant more than the house. She smiled, that smile that had haunted my dreams for months. "Then we are home." The word hung between us like a promise. I turned the key in the lock, and the door opened to our future, or what I believed was our future. The living room was small but bright, with furniture she'd chosen herself. A brown leather sofa faced a modest television. The kitchen opened to a dining area with a round table set for two. "I picked everything thinking of you," she said, watching my face. "The chair by the window, that's where you'll read your books in the morning." I walked to the chair and sat down. The fit was perfect. From here, I could see the garden she'd planted, tomatoes, herbs, morning glories climbing a small trellis. "You thought of everything," I said, my voice thick. She knelt beside my chair and took my hand. "I think of you every day, Colin, every single day since you left last time." That night, we sat on the small porch as the sun disappeared behind the palm trees. The air was thick with the scent of jasmine and cooking oil from neighboring houses. "Are you happy you came back?" she asked. I looked at her profile in the dying light, the curve of her jaw, the way her hair fell across her shoulder. "I'm happier than I've been in years," I said. "Since Margaret died, I thought happiness was something other people had, something I'd used up." She turned to me then, her eyes serious. "You haven't used it up, you just needed someone to share it with again." I reached for her hand, and she didn't pull away. Her skin was soft, familiar now after our long video calls. "I was so scared you'd change your mind," I admitted. "Scared you'd decide an old Scottish widower wasn't worth the trouble." She laughed, the sound like bells. "You're not old, you're experienced. You know what love costs. That makes you valuable." The words settled into my chest like warmth. For the first time since leaving Aberdeen, I felt certain I'd made the right choice. Later, as we lay in bed, she traced circles on my chest with her fingertip. "Tell me about your house in Scotland," she said. "The one you sold for me." The weight of it hit me again, 42 years of memories packed up and sold to strangers. "It was Margaret's house more than mine," I said. "She chose the wallpaper, the garden layout, even the doorknobs. After she died, I felt like a guest there." Mayuri's finger stopped moving. "But you loved it once." I nodded. "We built a life there. But life moves forward, doesn't it? Margaret would want me to be happy. She'd like you." I felt Mayuri smile against my shoulder. I would have liked her too, she whispered. Any woman who loved you that well must have been special. The next morning, I woke to the smell of rice cooking and Mayuri humming in the kitchen. Sunlight streamed through curtains she'd hung herself light blue with tiny flowers. I watched her move around our kitchen, our home, and felt something settle in my chest. Peace. Maybe even contentment. Good morning, my love, she called without turning around. Coffee is ready. I padded to the kitchen in my bare feet, still amazed this was real. She handed me a mug, not just any mug, but one with "World's Best Engineer" printed on the side. Where did you find this? I asked, laughing. I have my ways, she said, winking. I wanted you to feel at home, but it was more than feeling at home. For the first time since Margaret's funeral, I felt alive. I met Mayuri by accident. Last year, during what I thought would be my final trip to Thailand, I was wandering through a local market in Ubon, Ratchathani. The organized tours felt too cheerful, too full of couples holding hands and making plans. I preferred the quiet chaos of local life, vendors calling out prices, the smell of grilled meat and incense, the rhythm of a place that didn't need to perform for tourists. Her stall was tucked between a woman selling silk scarves and an old man repairing watches. Phone cases, chargers, tiny Bluetooth speakers, nothing glamorous. But she arranged everything with care, like each cheap plastic case mattered. When I stopped to look at a phone charger, she looked up and smiled. Not the practiced smile of someone trying to make a sale, but something genuine. You are Scottish? She asked, her English careful but clear. The accent gives me away, I said. She laughed. My English teacher at university was from Glasgow. I recognized the music in it. Most vendors would have launched into their sales pitch. Mayuri just talked. First time in Thailand? She asked, organizing a display of phone cases. Third time, I said, but first time alone. Something in my voice must have given me away because she looked up, studying my face. Alone can be peaceful, she said, but also lonely. I nodded, surprised by her directness. Both, I admitted. She was quiet for a moment, then said, My husband died 2 years ago. I understand the weight of alone. We talked for 20 minutes. She told me about her shop, how she was trying to save money to expand. I told her about my engineering work, about Scotland, about how different everything looked when you traveled without someone to share it with. Maybe that's the problem, she said, her voice thoughtful. Maybe you're still trying to see everything through 2 sets of eyes instead of learning to see with your own. The insight hit me like a punch. You might be right, I said. Maybe I need to learn how to look again. Before I left that day, she wrote her phone number on a piece of paper. If you get lonely for conversation, she said. I practice my English in the evenings. I tucked the paper into my wallet, not believing I'd use it. But that night, in my hotel room, I found myself dialing her number. Colin? She answered on the 3rd ring. I was hoping you might call. We talked for 2 hours. About everything and nothing. Her dreams of opening a bigger shop, maybe selling computers instead of just accessories. My work building communication networks across the highlands, connecting remote villages to the world. Her loneliness running the shop by herself. My loneliness rattling around a house full of memories. It's strange, she said near the end of the call. Talking to you feels easy, like we've known each other longer than 1 day. I felt it too, a connection I hadn't expected, hadn't been looking for. Over the next 3 months, we talked almost every night. Video calls that started at 7 her time, noon mine. She'd show me her shop, the new inventory she'd bought, the small improvements she was making. I'd show her my garden. Still, Margaret's garden really, overgrown and neglected. You should sell those tools, she said one evening, watching me struggle to trim the hedges. Come back here, start something new instead of maintaining something old. The idea terrified and thrilled me. I don't know, I said. This house, this life, it's all I know. She leaned closer to the camera, her face serious. Colin, you are 63, not 93. You still have time to build something beautiful. Maybe you need to start over here, where nobody expects you to be the man you used to be. Her words echoed in my head for weeks. Maybe you need to start over here. When she showed me pictures of small houses for rent near her shop, I found myself asking about prices. When she mentioned wanting a partner in life, not just business, I found myself imagining what that might look like. I could help you, I said during one late-night call. With the shop, with everything, if you'd want that. Her face lit up on the screen. I've been hoping you'd say that, she whispered. I've been hoping for months. That's when she first said it, the words that would change everything. When you come, we'll start our life, just us, no past, no ghosts, just Colin and Mayuri building something new. I believed her. God help me, I believed every word. The real estate agent in Aberdeen was a young woman with kind eyes who kept calling me Mr. Fraser, like I was her grandfather. Are you certain about this? She asked, going over the papers one final time. It's a seller's market, but once it's gone, it's gone. I signed my name with a hand steadier than I felt. I'm certain, I said. It's time for someone else to make memories here. But selling the house was more than paperwork and market values. It meant packing up 42 years of life, deciding what deserved space in my new world and what belonged to the past. Margaret's jewelry went to her sister. Most of the furniture went to charity, but her bookshelves and shelves of romance novels and gardening guides, those I couldn't give away. I boxed them up, knowing I'd probably never read them but unable to let them go. Mayuri called every day during the packing process. How are you feeling? She'd ask, her voice gentle through the phone. Scared, I'd admit. Excited, but scared. She'd listen to me describe what I was keeping, what I was giving away, the weight of choosing between past and future. You're being so brave, she'd say. I'm proud of you for choosing happiness over comfort. Some nights, she'd stay on video while I packed, keeping me company across the miles. Show me Margaret's garden one more time, she'd say. I'd carry the laptop outside, pointing the camera at the roses Margaret had planted, the herb garden she'd tended, the small greenhouse where she'd started seedlings every spring. It's beautiful, Mayuri would say. She had good taste. Our garden will be different, but just as loved. The morning the sold sign went up, I called her with tears in my eyes. It's done, I said. There's no going back now. Her face on the screen was radiant with joy. There's no going back, she agreed. Only going forward, to our life, to our home. But it wasn't just the house she needed money for. 2 weeks after the sale went through, she called with worry in her voice. Colin, I have a problem, she said. The landlord is raising the rent on my shop space. If I can't pay the increase, I'll lose everything I've built. My heart clenched. How much? I asked. She looked away from the camera. $10,000. I know it's a lot. I wouldn't ask, but I stopped her. It's not a lot, not for our future. I'll wire it tomorrow. The relief on her face was immediate and overwhelming. You would do that for me? She asked, tears in her eyes. For us? I said. I'm investing in us. The next day, I sent the money. She called that afternoon, sobbing with gratitude. No one has ever believed in me like this, she said. No one has ever cared about my dreams. I felt like a hero, like the kind of man who could still make a difference in someone's life. Over the next month, she sent me pictures of the improvements she was making to the shop. New display cases, better lighting, a small office in the back where she could do paperwork. This is all because of you, she'd say, because you believed in me. Each photo filled me with pride and purpose. I was building something again, creating something that mattered. She also sent pictures of the house we'd share. New curtains in the living room blue with tiny white flowers. A dining table set for two with matching plates and glasses. A nameplate by the front door that made my heart stop. Colin and Mayuri Fraser. I had it made. She said when I asked about it, is that presumptuous? I want everyone to know we belong to each other. I stared at that nameplate for a long time. Fraser. She wanted to take my name. Margaret had kept her maiden name when we married, a modern choice I'd respected. But seeing Mayuri choose my name, claim it as her own, felt like she was claiming me completely. It's perfect, I told her. It's exactly right. The night before my flight to Thailand, I stood in my empty house one last time. The walls were bare, the rooms echoed, the garden looked abandoned already. For a moment, the magnitude of what I was doing hit me like a physical blow. I was 63 years old, moving to a country I'd visited 3 times. To live with a woman I'd known for less than a year. My pension would stretch further in Thailand, but it wouldn't stretch forever. If this didn't work, Mayuri's call interrupted my spiraling thoughts. Tomorrow, she said, her voice breathless with excitement. Tomorrow you come home. The word home steadied me. Tomorrow. I agreed. Are you ready for me? She laughed. I've been ready for months. The house is perfect. Our bed is made. Everything is waiting for you. That night, I dreamed of the nameplate by the door. Colin and Mayuri Fraser. In the dream, I was coming home from work, and she was waiting on the porch, smiling. Welcome home, she said. How was your day? It felt so real, so possible, that I woke up eager instead of terrified. I was building a new life. With a woman who loved me enough to take my name. The man appeared at Mayuri's shop 3 days after I arrived. I was helping her arrange a new shipment of phone cases when he walked in, tall and lean with graying hair and the weathered hands of someone who worked outdoors. Mayuri looked up and her face changed, not frightened, exactly, but careful. Niran, she said in Thai, then switched to English. Colin, this is my cousin, Niran. Niran looked at me like I was a puzzle he couldn't solve. So you are the Scottish man, he said in heavily accented English. Mayuri said you were helping with the shop. I extended my hand for a shake. Colin Fraser. Nice to meet you. He shook my hand but didn't smile. Helping with shop, yes. She told us you were just helper. For business, not. He gestured between Mayuri and me. Not husband. The word hung in the air like smoke. Mayuri's laugh was too bright, too quick. Niran drinks too much, she said, touching my arm. He gets confused about what I tell him. But I saw something pass between them, a look that lasted half a second too long. I should go help other customers, Niran said, though there were no other customers. He left without buying anything. That night, I asked Mayuri about the interaction. Your cousin seemed surprised to see me, I said, trying to keep my voice casual. We were eating dinner at our small table, chicken and rice she'd cooked with careful attention. Surprised about what? She didn't look up from her plate. About me being here. About us. She finally met my eyes. Niran is jealous. His wife left him last year, and he doesn't like seeing other people happy. Don't let him poison your mind with his bitterness. I wanted to believe her. The explanation made sense, but something about the encounter stuck with me like a splinter. The way he'd said just help her, like he'd been told something specific, something different from what I understood about our relationship. I pushed the thought away. People gossiped. Maybe Mayuri had been protective of our privacy, downplaying our romance to family until I arrived. That seemed reasonable. But then I found the receipt. I was looking for a screwdriver to fix a loose handle on one of our kitchen cabinets when I opened a drawer and found a stack of papers. Most were in Thai, but one caught my eye, a receipt from an appliance store, dated 3 weeks before my arrival. The total was substantial, nearly $800, for a refrigerator, washing machine, and small television. The same appliances that had been in the house when I arrived, the ones Mayuri had told me she'd bought for us after I agreed to come. I stared at the date. 3 weeks before I arrived, but also 2 weeks after she'd called me crying about the shop rent, 2 weeks after I'd wired her $10,000. Money she'd said she desperately needed to keep her business alive. Money she'd apparently used to furnish our house. Or had she? I looked around our living room with new eyes. The television was small, older model. The refrigerator in the kitchen had scratches on the door. The washing machine in the small utility room made grinding noises. These weren't new appliances. They weren't even good appliances. But the receipt was for new ones, expensive ones. Where were those? When Mayuri came home from the shop that evening, I was sitting at the kitchen table with the receipt in front of me. What's this? I asked, keeping my voice level. She glanced at the paper and her face went very still. Where did you find that? In the drawer. Looking for tools. Mayuri, this is dated before I arrived. You bought appliances 3 weeks ago, but you told me you needed money for shop rent. She sat down across from me, her hands folded in her lap. Colin, you're upset about nothing. I bought things for the house, yes, with my own money. The shop rent was separate. But her voice had changed, become more formal. Your own money, I repeated, but you called me crying that you didn't have money for rent. She looked away. I borrowed from a friend. I didn't want to take more from you than necessary. It almost made sense. Almost. But the receipt showed appliances we didn't have, and the timing felt wrong. These appliances, I said, pointing to the list. Where are they? She stood up quickly. I returned them. They were too big for the house. I got smaller ones instead. She moved toward the kitchen, away from the conversation. I kept the receipt for taxes, for business. I followed her, the paper still in my hand. Mayuri, talk to me. Something doesn't feel right. She spun around, and for just a moment, I saw something in her eyes I'd never seen before. Anger. Real anger, not the playful irritation of a couple working through problems. You don't trust me, she said. After everything I've done for you, after giving up my independence to build this life with you, you don't trust me. The accusation hit like a slap. That's not what this is about, I said. I just want to understand. She held up her hand. I'm tired, Colin. I work hard all day to build our future, and I come home to interrogation. Is this what marriage means to you? Suspicion. Her eyes filled with tears, and immediately I felt like the villain. That night, she slept turned away from me, her body rigid with hurt. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, the receipt burning a hole in my mind. But by morning, her anger had melted into sadness, and when she whispered, I'm sorry I got defensive. I just love you so much, and the thought of losing your trust terrifies me. I folded her into my arms and told her I was sorry too. I threw the receipt away, but the splinter was still there, working its way deeper. I woke up to silence, not the comfortable quiet of Mayuri sleeping beside me, but the hollow silence of being alone. I reached across the bed and found cool sheets, no body warmth, no depression in the pillow where her head should have been. Mayuri? I called, my voice thick with sleep. No answer. I padded to the bathroom. Empty. Kitchen. Empty. Living room. Empty. Her purse wasn't on the counter where she always left it. Her sandals weren't by the door. I walked outside, thinking maybe she'd gone to the garden early, but the small porch was vacant, the morning air already thick with heat. Maybe she'd gone to the shop early. We'd talked about inventory coming in, about needing to be there before the delivery truck arrived. I showered and dressed, telling myself it was nothing, just early morning business. But when I walked to her shop 15 minutes later, the metal shutters were pulled down and locked. The sign she usually hung out front, open in Thai and English, was nowhere to be seen. I stood there for 10 minutes, waiting. Other shops were opening around me, vendors setting up their stalls, the morning market coming to life. But Mayuri's shop stayed shuttered. I pulled out my phone and called her number. It rang once, then went to a recording in Thai that I couldn't understand. I tried again. Same result. Back at the house, I searched for clues I might have missed. Her clothes were gone from the closet, not all of them, but enough. Her toothbrush was missing from the bathroom. The small jewelry box where she kept her earrings and rings was gone too. I opened drawers systematically, my hands shaking now. Her passport wasn't in the bedside table where I'd seen it before. Neither was the emergency cash she kept in an envelope, but she'd left things behind too. A few dresses still hung in the closet. Her shampoo and conditioner sat on the shower shelf. The nameplate by the front door still read Colin and Mayuri Fraser. If she was just going somewhere temporarily, why take her passport? If she was leaving permanently, why leave anything at all? I called her phone every hour that first day. By evening, the number was disconnected entirely. The next morning, I went back to her shop and found an old woman sweeping in front of the neighboring stall. Mayuri? I asked, pointing to the shuttered shop. The woman shook her head and said something in rapid Thai that I couldn't follow, but her tone was sympathetic. She kept saying, pai lai, and making a gesture with her hand like something flying away. Gone. That much I understood. Mayuri was gone. On the third day, I tried to find Niran, her cousin. I walked through the market, asking vendors if they knew him, describing his appearance as best I could. Most people shrugged or shook their heads. One young man pointed toward a motorcycle repair shop on the edge of town. But when I got there, the owner had never heard of anyone named Niran. By the fourth day, I was calling the police. The officer who took my report spoke decent English and listened patiently while I explained the situation. She is your wife? He asked. Not legally, I admitted. But we were living together, we had plans. He nodded slowly. And she took your money? I explained about the shop rent, about the joint bank account we'd opened. How much money? When I told him, he whistled low. You gave girlfriend $64,000? The number sounded even worse when he said it aloud. $64,000. More than 2 years of my pension. Money I'd gotten from selling my home, my tools, my car, money that was supposed to last us for years. We were building a life together, I said, but the words sounded pathetic even to me. The officer was kind but clear. Mr. Fraser, if this woman was your girlfriend and she left, this is not crime. If you gave her money willingly, this is not theft. Unless you have evidence she lied to you about who she was, or she forged documents, or she threatened you. He shrugged. We can take report, but probably nothing will come. I gave him her full name, her shop address, her phone number. He wrote everything down carefully. We will ask around, he promised. But if she has left Ubon Ratchathani, if she has gone to Bangkok or Cambodia or anywhere else, very difficult to find. That night, I sat in our empty house, my empty house now, and tried to understand what had happened. Had she planned this from the beginning? Had every conversation, every "I love you," every plan for our future been part of an elaborate lie? Or had she genuinely cared for me until the money cleared, until she had what she needed to disappear? I found myself replaying our last conversation, looking for clues I'd missed. She'd been quiet at dinner, distracted. When I asked if everything was okay, she'd said, "Just thinking about tomorrow, about the future." I'd assumed she meant our future together. Now I wondered if she'd been thinking about her future without me. The worst part wasn't the money, though $64,000 was devastating. The worst part was the silence. No explanation, no goodbye, no acknowledgement that what we'd shared had meant anything at all. She'd simply erased me from her life as completely as if I'd never existed. I was 63 years old, alone in a foreign country, with no home to return to and no money to rebuild. But more than that, I was a fool who'd believed in love when I should have known better. The bank officer looked at me with the same expression I was getting used to, pity mixed with disbelief. "Mr. Fraser," he said gently, "I'm very sorry, but the account shows a balance of $432. He turned his computer screen toward me, showing columns of numbers that might as well have been hieroglyphics. The last withdrawal was 3 days ago, $40,000. My throat felt like sand. "Show me all the withdrawals," I managed to say. He clicked through screens, pulling up a history that made my stomach turn. The money had been bleeding out for weeks. 5,000 here, 8,000 there, 15,000 in a single transaction 2 weeks ago. All of it authorized with Mayuri's signature on the joint account we'd opened together. She told me she was using small amounts for household expenses, I said, staring at the numbers. For the shop, for us. The bank officer's face was professionally neutral, but I could see the judgment in his eyes. Another old foreigner, another woman, another empty account. All these withdrawals were made in person, with proper identification, he said. Technically, everything was legal. $64,000. Gone. I'd opened the account with such hope, both our names on the paperwork, planning for our shared future. Joint account for joint expenses, joint dreams, joint stupidity. She drained it systematically while I slept beside her, while I helped her arrange phone cases, while I talked about the life we were building. "Can I close the account?" I asked. "What's left?" He printed out a statement and slid it across the desk. $432.16, he said. After fees, probably 400 even. I signed the papers with hands that shook, taking out the last remnants of my life savings in cash that fit easily in my wallet. Outside the bank, I sat on a bench in the shade and tried to do math I didn't want to do. My monthly pension was $1,800, transferred from Scotland. Rent on the house was $800 a month. Food, utilities, basic living expenses, maybe another $600 if I was careful. That left me $400 a month for everything else. No buffer for emergencies, no money to fly home even if I had a home to fly to, no cushion for the 1,000 small disasters that could bankrupt a man living this close to the edge. I walked back to the police station, though I knew it was pointless. The same officer from before looked up when I entered, and I saw recognition and pity cross his face. "Mr. Fraser, did you find your girlfriend?" "No," I said, "but I found out she took all my money. $64,000 from our joint account." He leaned back in his chair. "All of it?" When I nodded, he let out a low whistle. "I am very sorry. But like I told you before, if she had access to account legally. I know, I said. It's not a crime to take money from an account with your name on it, even if the person who earned it trusted you not to steal it. He looked uncomfortable with my bitterness. Did you learn anything about where she might have gone? We asked around the market. Some people remember her, but nobody knows where she went, like she just vanished. I gave him my phone number again, though we both knew he'd never call. Walking home, I passed her shuttered shop and saw that someone had already stripped the faded PHONE accessories sign from the front. In a week or two, another vendor would rent the space, hang their own sign, and no trace of my Yuri would remain. That evening, I did something I hadn't done since Margaret's funeral. I got drunk. Seriously, stupidly drunk on cheap Thai whiskey that tasted like paint thinner and regret. I sat at our kitchen table, my kitchen table now, and tried to understand how I'd become this person. How had I gone from a sensible man with a pension and a paid-off house to a broke fool sitting alone in a foreign country, talking to empty rooms? The whiskey didn't provide answers, but it did provide something like numbness. And numbness, for that night at least, was enough. The old woman at the vegetable stall had been watching me for days. I could feel her eyes following me as I walked through the market, buying rice and instant noodles and whatever protein I could afford. When I stopped to look at her tomatoes, she gestured for me to come closer. "You are Scottish, man," she said in careful English. "The one who lived with my Yuri." I nodded, embarrassed to be recognized for my stupidity. She looked around to make sure no one was listening, then leaned forward. "She is gone with Bangkok man," she said quietly. "I saw them leave together. Early morning 4 days ago. He had big truck." My stomach dropped. "Bangkok man?" She nodded gravely. "He come to her shop sometimes. Before you came. After you came too. Big man, expensive clothes. She know him long time." The words hit like physical blows. Long time? Maybe 1 year, maybe more. My friend who sell fruit, she tell me this Bangkok man give my Yuri money before. Other times, I felt sick. Other foreign men? I asked, though I dreaded the answer. The woman's face was full of sympathy and something else. Shame, maybe, for what her people had done to mine. "Yes," she said simply. "Not many, but some. Usually older men, alone men. She very kind, very beautiful. They fall in love. They give money. She made the same gesture I'd seen before, like something flying away. Then she disappear. I bought tomatoes I didn't want and thanked her for telling me the truth. "I am sorry," she said as I turned to go. "She seemed different with you. Maybe she loved you little bit, but love not enough to change bad habits. Maybe she loved you a little bit." The kindness of it almost broke me. That afternoon, I walked to the small internet cafe near the market and spent 2 hours researching romance scams Thailand and foreign men cheated Thailand. The stories I found were depressingly familiar. Lonely widowers and divorcees, usually in their 50s or 60s, meeting Thai women online or in person. Whirlwind romances, promises of marriage, requests for money to solve urgent problems, shop rent, medical bills, family emergencies, business opportunities, and then disappearance. Some men lost thousands. Others, like me, lost everything. Most were too embarrassed to report it, too ashamed to admit they'd been taken in by someone half their age who'd claimed to love them. The comment sections were full of bitter warnings. If you're old enough to be her father, she's not interested in your personality. Never send money to someone you met online. If it seems too good to be true, it is. All advice I could have used 6 months ago, useless now. I found a forum for men who'd been scammed in Southeast Asia. The stories were heartbreaking and depressingly similar. Jim from Australia lost his retirement savings to a woman in Manila who disappeared after he bought her a house. Robert from Canada sold his farm to move to Vietnam for a woman who vanished the day his money cleared. Frank from England was living in a shelter in Bangkok, too broke to fly home after his Thai fiancée took everything. But what struck me most wasn't the money they'd lost, but the isolation they described afterward. Men cut off from family and friends who'd warned them, too proud to admit they'd been fooled, too poor to rebuild their lives. Some had been in Thailand for years, working odd jobs just to survive, too ashamed to go home and face the people who'd tried to warn them. I was becoming one of them. The old foreign men you see in cheap bars at 3 in the afternoon, nursing single beers and staring at nothing. The ones locals whisper about another casualty of believing that love could happen to anyone at any age. That night, I looked at myself in the bathroom mirror and saw a stranger. My face was thinner, older, marked by a kind of defeat I'd never worn before. The man looking back at me wasn't the successful engineer who'd retired with dignity, wasn't the devoted husband who'd nursed his wife through cancer, wasn't even the optimistic fool who'd thought he could start over at 63. This man was a cautionary tale. A warning other people would point to when someone they loved started talking about finding happiness with a younger woman in a foreign country. I'd become exactly what I'd never thought I could be, a victim. Lek found me sitting outside his noodle shop at 2 in the morning staring at nothing. He was maybe 30, spoke decent English, and had been one of the few people who'd treated me normally since Mayuri disappeared. Not with pity, not with judgment, just as another human being trying to get by. "You okay, Mr. Colin?" he asked, setting down a plastic chair beside me. "You look like ghost." I felt like a ghost, like I was haunting my own life, drifting through days that had no purpose, no direction, no point. "I can't afford the house anymore," I told him. "The rent's too much. I need to find somewhere cheaper." He nodded like he'd been expecting this. "How much you can pay?" When I told him, he was quiet for a long time. "I have small room upstairs," he finally said. "Very small. Just bed, table, one window. You help me with shop sometimes. I give you good price." The room was barely larger than a closet, with walls so thin I could hear every conversation in the restaurant below. But it had a window that faced east, so I got morning light, and it cost me $200 a month instead of $800. Lek helped me move my few belongings, a suitcase of clothes, Margaret's books, and a small bag of tools I'd somehow forgotten to sell in Aberdeen. "Why are you helping me?" I asked him as we carried the last box upstairs. He shrugged. "Maybe someday I need help too. Maybe kindness come back around." It was a simple answer, but it was the first genuine kindness anyone had shown me since Mayuri vanished. That night, lying on a thin mattress in a room barely big enough to contain it, I felt something I hadn't expected. Not gratitude exactly, but not despair either. Something like acceptance. I started helping Lek in the shop the next morning, wiping tables, taking orders from the few customers who spoke English, washing dishes in the small kitchen behind the restaurant. The work was simple, mindless, and exactly what I needed. My hands stayed busy while my mind slowly stopped racing in circles, stopped replaying every conversation with Mayuri, stopped calculating how much money I'd lost per day, per hour, per minute of our relationship. The regular customers got used to seeing me there. The old man who came for soup every morning started nodding when he saw me. The group of young office workers who ate lunch there began including me in their conversations, teaching me basic Thai phrases in exchange for help with their English. Nobody asked about the white-haired foreigner working in a noodle shop. In a tourist town, broken dreams were common enough to be unremarkable. Some days I walked by the house Mayuri and I had shared. It sat empty now, the garden already beginning to return to wilderness. The nameplate was gone, someone had pried it off, leaving screw holes in the doorframe like wounds. I'd paid the landlord 2 months' rent in advance before Mayuri disappeared, money I couldn't get back, money that now belonged to no one. 3 months after she vanished, I got an email from my sister in Edinburgh. "Colin, how are you? We haven't heard from you since you moved. Are you happy?" I stared at the message for an hour before responding. What could I tell her? That I'd been the fool she'd warned me I might become? That I was living in a closet above a noodle shop, washing dishes for pocket money? That the woman I'd moved halfway around the world for had robbed me blind and disappeared? "I'm well," I wrote back, still adjusting to life here, but learning every day. "Thailand is beautiful. Hope everyone is healthy." I hit send before I could change my mind, then immediately regretted the lie. But the truth would have required explanations I wasn't ready to give, sympathy I wasn't ready to accept, and possibly offers of help I was too proud to take. One evening, as I was closing up the restaurant, Lek asked me a question that stopped me cold. "You ever think about going home?" I looked up from the table I was cleaning. "To Scotland?" He nodded. "You have family there, yes? People who love you?" I did have people there. My sister, a few old colleagues, neighbors I'd known for decades. People who'd probably take me in if I called, who'd help me get back on my feet. "I can't afford the flight," I said. It was true, but not the whole truth. The whole truth was that I couldn't bear the thought of walking into my sister's house, seeing her face try to hide her pity, hearing her not say, "I told you so," even though she'd be thinking it. Maybe you save money, Lex suggested. Little bit every month. Maybe next year, year after. Next year felt like a lifetime away. But that night, lying in my tiny room, I did something I hadn't done since Mayuri disappeared. I made a plan. Not a grand plan for reclaiming my life or finding happiness. Just a small, practical plan for survival. I would work for Lek, save what money I could, and in a year, maybe 2, I'd have enough for a flight home. I'd swallow my pride and call my sister. I'd start over again, this time with hard-earned wisdom about the difference between loneliness and love. It wasn't much of a plan, but it was something to hold on to in the dark hours when the weight of my mistakes felt like it might crush me. I was 63 years old, broke, and alone in a foreign country. But I was still breathing, still thinking, still capable of learning from my catastrophic stupidity. And maybe, in some pathetic way, that was enough. 6 months later, I was fixing a broken phone for one of Lek's customers when I realized something had shifted. The work felt familiar now, comfortable. My hands remembered the delicate precision of electronics repair from 40 years of engineering, and there was satisfaction in bringing dead devices back to life. The customer, a young woman whose phone had died in a rainstorm, smiled when I handed it back, working perfectly. "How much?" she asked. I charged her what parts had cost me, nothing for labor. She looked surprised and pleased. "You could make money this way," Lex said, watching the interaction. "People always breaking phones, computers. You have skill." It was true. Word was getting around the market that the Scottish man could fix electronics. People started bringing me broken devices, not just phones, but radios, small televisions, fans, anything with circuits and connections. I worked on them in the evenings after the restaurant closed, using the small desk in my room and a set of basic tools I'd bought with my dishwashing wages. The work reminded me who I'd been before Mayuri, before the move, before the catastrophe. I'd been good at solving problems, at taking broken systems and making them whole again. Those skills hadn't disappeared with my money and my dignity. They were still there, waiting to be rediscovered. I wasn't making much, $5 here, $10 there, but it was money I'd earned through skill rather than sympathy. Money that belonged to me because I'd created value, not because someone pitied the foolish old foreigner. For the first time since Mayuri vanished, I felt like something more than a victim. One morning, while I was having coffee at Lek's counter, he asked me something unexpected. "You still angry at her?" "At Mayuri?" I considered the question seriously. Was I angry? I'd been devastated, humiliated, financially ruined. But angry? "No," I said, surprising myself. "Not anymore." He looked curious. "Why not?" "She took your money, broke your heart." I stirred my coffee, thinking. Because anger would mean I still believed she owed me something. That what we had was real enough to be betrayed. But it wasn't real, was it? Not for her. The realization didn't hurt as much as I'd expected. Mayuri had seen a lonely old man with money and no family. She'd played a role, told me what I needed to hear, taken what she could get, and moved on. It was business for her, even if it felt like love to me. Being angry at her would be like being angry at a storm for getting you wet. Destructive, pointless, and ultimately self-defeating. "Maybe she did love you little bit," Lex said, echoing what the market woman had told me. "Maybe she's sorry she hurt you." I shrugged. Maybe. But sorry doesn't give me my money back or undo the choices I made. I can't live on maybe. That afternoon, I wrote a letter I never intended to send. Not to Mayuri, I had no address, no way to reach her, but to myself. To the man I'd been 6 months ago. "Colin," I wrote, "you were lonely. You'd been alone for 3 years, and loneliness makes people do desperate things. Mayuri offered you something you thought you'd lost forever, the feeling of being wanted, needed, chosen. That wasn't pathetic, that was human. But you confused loneliness with love, and you confused someone's willingness to accept your money with someone's willingness to accept you. Those are expensive mistakes, but they're not unforgivable ones. You're not the first man to make them, and you won't be the last. The question isn't why you made those mistakes. The question is what you do now." I folded the letter and put it in my wallet, next to the last photo I had of Mayuri and me together. In the picture, we're standing in front of our house, the house I can no longer afford, and she's holding the key I thought meant forever. We both look happy. Maybe she was performing happiness, but I wasn't. In that moment, I genuinely believed I'd found my second chance at love. Looking at the photo now didn't fill me with rage or regret. It filled me with something stranger. Compassion. For the man I'd been, who'd risked everything for the possibility of not dying alone. For the woman who'd maybe started as a con artist but found herself genuinely caring for someone she was supposed to be using. For the collision of needs and weaknesses that had brought us together and torn us apart. I was 64 years old now. I lived in a room above a noodle shop, fixed broken electronics for small change, and sent half my pension home to pay for mistakes I'd made in the name of love. It wasn't the life I'd planned, but it was a life I was learning to live. And for the first time since Mayuri disappeared, that felt like enough. The letter from Scotland arrived on a Tuesday morning, 6 months after I'd stopped expecting mail from anyone. Lek brought it upstairs with my morning coffee, his face curious. "From your sister?" he asked, seeing the Edinburgh postmark. I nodded, suddenly nervous. Janet hadn't written since my last cheerful lie about how well I was adjusting to Thai life. "Dear Colin," the letter began, "I hope you're truly as well as your emails suggest, but something in your last message worried me. You sounded distant. Not like yourself. I know you moved to Thailand to start fresh, and I respect that choice. But I want you to know that if things aren't working out the way you hoped, you always have a home here. No questions asked. No judgment. Just family who loves you." She went on to tell me about her grandchildren, about changes in the neighborhood, about mutual friends who asked after me. Normal family news that felt like messages from another world. But it was her closing that made me sit down heavily on my narrow bed. "Colin, whatever happened over there, whatever mistakes you think you've made, they don't define you. You're still the man who took care of Margaret through 2 years of cancer. You're still the engineer who brought telephone service to remote villages. You're still my brother. Come home when you're ready." I read the letter 3 times before I understood what she was really saying. She knew. Maybe not the details, but she knew something had gone wrong. Known it for months, probably. And instead of pushing for explanations or saying "I told you so," she was offering me exactly what I needed most: unconditional acceptance. That afternoon, I did something I hadn't done since before Mayuri disappeared. I walked to the internet cafe and wrote an honest email. Not completely honest, I couldn't bear to tell Janet about living above a noodle shop or how thoroughly I'd been taken in, but honest enough. "Dear Janet, you're right that things haven't worked out as planned. The woman I moved here for, it didn't work out. I'm not ready to come home yet. But knowing I can means everything. I'm learning to rebuild here first. Learning who I am when everything I thought I knew about myself gets stripped away." I told her about my electronics repair work, about Lek and the restaurant, about finding purpose in small acts of service. I didn't tell her about the money or the joint account or waking up alone. But I told her I was surviving, learning, maybe even growing in ways I hadn't expected. "I'm not the same man who left Scotland," I wrote. "I think I might be becoming someone better." Her response came within days. "Take all the time you need, but remember, coming home isn't admitting defeat. Sometimes it's just admitting you've learned what you went to learn." That evening, I showed Lek my sister's letters. He read them carefully, his English good enough to catch the subtext. "She loves you very much," he said finally. I nodded. "She does. They all did. I was just too lonely to see it." He folded the letters and handed them back. "Lonely is hard thing. Make people do crazy things. But crazy not same as stupid. You came here looking for something. Maybe you found it. Just not way you expected." I thought about that for days. What had I been looking for in Thailand? Love, obviously. Companionship. A sense of being needed again. But underneath all that, maybe I'd been looking for proof that my life wasn't over, that a man could start fresh at 63, that the story wasn't finished just because one chapter had ended badly. In a strange way, I'd found all of those things. Not with Mayure, she'd been an illusion, a mirror reflecting back what I wanted to see. But here, in this small room above a noodle shop, fixing broken phones and learning to live with less, I was proving that a man could survive catastrophic mistakes and still find meaning. Still contribute something. Still matter to someone, even if that someone was just a young restaurant owner who'd shown kindness to a stranger. I wasn't the man who'd sold his house in Aberdeen for love. I wasn't the successful engineer with a pension and a plan. I wasn't even the hopeful fool who'd believed that romance could happen to anyone at any age. I was someone else entirely. Someone smaller maybe, but also more honest. Someone who'd learned the difference between being alone and being lonely. Someone who'd discovered that survival wasn't about avoiding mistakes, it was about living with their consequences without letting them define you. At 64, I was starting over again, not with another person this time, but with myself. And maybe that was the fresh start I'd been looking for all along.